Maya Chen was 26 years old when they gave her the badge. It was a plain thing, laminated. A bad photo, she had blinked, and her name in small black letters below the VA hospital logo. The charge nurse, a woman named Holloway, who had the posture of someone who had spent 2 decades bracing against difficult things, handed it across the desk without ceremony. "Ward 7, Holloway said. "Special Operations Recovery. You'll start Monday." Maya took the badge and looked at it for a moment. "Any advice?" she asked. Holloway looked at her the way people look at a weather forecast they don't trust. "Don't take it personally when they don't talk to you, and don't pretend they will." Maya nodded. She drove home. She set her alarm for 5:15. She did not sleep much. The hallway of Ward 7 smelled like industrial cleaner, and something underneath the cleaner that no amount of cleaning could reach. Years of it. Hard years. The men inside were not unfriendly. That was the first thing Maya noticed. They were not the angry, difficult patients she had been quietly warned about in the break room by nurses from other floors. They were polite, mostly. They said thank you when she checked their vitals. They moved their arms when she needed to take blood pressure readings. But they were sealed. That was the only word for it. Like something had been closed inside them, and the lock was on the inside, and they had swallowed the key a long time ago, in a place far from here. Green Berets, Rangers. Men who had been in the kind of situations that didn't appear in news reports. Men who had held friends while they died. They were not going to open up to a young woman with a bad photo on her badge just because she smiled at them. Maya understood this. She did not try to force anything. She just showed up, every day, on time. She checked her charts carefully. She refilled medications before they ran out. She learned their names, not just first and last, but the nicknames too, the ones they used with each other. Root, V, Big Mike, Cheese. She didn't use the nicknames yet, but she learned them. The first real conversation happened in the 3rd week. It was with Sergeant First Class Dale Rutherford. Triple amputee, 2 Purple Hearts. A man who had the particular kind of quiet that filled a room. He was sitting up in bed with a legal pad on his knee, writing something, when Maya came in for his morning check. She looked at his clipboard. She checked his numbers. She was turning to leave when she stopped. She had forgotten to update the refill on the patient in the next bay. She went and fixed it, and came back. Rutherford was watching her when she returned. "You caught that," he said. It wasn't a question. "I should have caught it sooner," she said. He looked at her for a moment. "You forgot to check the refill on Bay 4 this morning." "I know. I just fixed it." "I saw." She paused. "Do you always watch the nurses this closely?" He looked back at his legal pad. "Just the ones who might make a mistake that kills me." It was not cruel. It was a test. She understood that. She did not flinch. She said, "Fair enough," and walked out, and something very small but not unimportant happened in the space between them. A small door opened, just slightly, the way a door opens when someone knocks on it the right way. The second conversation was harder. Staff Sergeant Victor Osei had not said more than a few sentences to anyone on the medical staff in 7 months. His chart listed his injury as a spinal trauma sustained during a training exercise. He was 29 years old. He had been, by every account, a gifted athlete and an exceptional soldier. Now he lay in a hospital bed while physical therapists came to him, because he could not come to them. Maya came in at 6 in the morning for his vitals and noticed he was holding a magazine, the same Sports Illustrated he had been holding for 4 months. She could tell because the cover was bent at the same corner. She was about to leave when she said, without planning to, "I read that issue. The swimmer they profile on page 40. She trained at my high school." She didn't know why she said it. It just came out. Victor Osei looked up from the magazine. He looked at her the way you look at something that surprised you in a place where nothing surprising is supposed to happen. "What school?" he said. "Myers Park, Charlotte." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My cousin went to Myers Park." That was it. That was the whole conversation. But for Victor Osei, that was everything. That was the equivalent, in the language of Ward 7, of a long and meaningful talk. Maya noted his vitals and left. She did not make a big deal of it. She did not smile to herself in the hallway where he could see. She just moved on to the next room. But she remembered his cousin went to Myers Park. And the next week, when she came in with his medication, she said, "What's your cousin's name?" "I might have known her." He told her. She didn't know her, but she asked a few questions, and he answered them, and by the end of that visit, they had spoken more words than he had spoken to any staff member in 7 months. 3 months after Maya arrived, she caught something the attending doctor had missed. One of the patients had been taking a supplement he had ordered online, recommended by someone in an internet forum for veterans dealing with chronic pain. A natural supplement, the kind sold in health stores, the kind most people would not think twice about. But combined with the blood thinner he had been prescribed, it created a dangerous interaction. The kind that could cause internal bleeding without obvious symptoms, until it was very bad. Maya caught it because she had been reading, not for any particular reason. She had simply been reading about medication interactions in her own time, because she was the kind of person who read about things in her own time. She flagged it quietly. The attending reviewed it. The supplement was removed. The patient never knew how close it had been. Dr. Webb, the unit chief, called her into his office that afternoon. He was a former Army officer himself, broad-shouldered and serious. A man who chose his words with the care of someone who had learned that words mattered. "Good catch," he said. "Thank you. You've been doing well here." He paused. "I'll be honest with you. I wasn't sure when you started. These men need a certain kind of care. I wasn't sure you had the experience for it." Maya sat with that for a moment. "I'm still learning," she said, "but I'm not going anywhere." Dr. Webb looked at her. He nodded, once. That was the closest he came to saying he had been wrong. What nobody on Ward 7 knew, what Maya had not told anyone, not Dr. Webb, not Holloway, not her colleagues on the floor, was why she had come here. Her father had served for 22 years, infantry first, then military police. He had been a solid man, the kind of man who fixed things around the house on weekends, and coached youth soccer, and made the same 3 jokes at every family dinner. Then he came back from his last deployment, and something had changed in a way that was hard to name and harder to fix. It happened slowly. He pulled back, the jokes stopped, the weekends got quieter. He started sleeping in the living room because he said he slept better there, and then he started not sleeping at all. And then he moved to Tucson because he said he needed the dry air for his joints, which was technically true, and also not the whole truth. Maya had called him every Sunday for 6 years. He had answered most of those calls. She had gone into nursing because of him, not to be near people like him. She had not thought about it that clearly at the time. She had gone into nursing the way you walk toward something that pulls at you without fully explaining itself. And then, when the position on Ward 7 opened, she had applied without hesitating. Her hands had been steady on the keyboard. She had not second-guessed it. She was not there to heal her father through other men. She understood that that would be a terrible reason, and she was too self-aware to let herself do it. She was there because she understood something about what these men had left behind when they came home, and that understanding lived in her body, not just her mind, and it made her better at the work. That was all. That was enough. In the 5th month, she started sitting with Rutherford during his pain episodes. They happened at night, usually around 2 in the morning. Phantom pain, a real and documented neurological phenomenon, not imaginary, not weakness, but the nervous system firing signals toward limbs that were no longer there. It was one of the cruelest things the body could do to a person, to mourn something that loudly. There was medication. The medication helped only so much. Maya was not always on the night shift, but when she was, and when Rutherford's light came on, she came. She didn't talk. He didn't either. She sat in the chair near the window, and he lay in the bed, and they waited together for the pain to pass, the way you wait out a storm with someone, when there is nothing else to do, and the being there is the whole point. When it passed, she would say something practical. She would check the medication schedule, or mention something about the morning routine, and he would say something short, and she would leave. She never called attention to it. She never mentioned it in the morning. It was just a thing that happened, and it became one of the small structures of trust that hold a place like Ward 7 together, invisible from the outside, solid as anything. In the 6th month, Maya's father had a heart attack. It was not fatal. The doctors in Tucson said he was lucky. which is a word doctors use when they mean, this time. Maya flew out the next morning. She sat in a hospital, a different kind of hospital, bright and crowded, and nothing like Ward 7, and she watched her father in a bed with tubes in his arm, and she felt something she did not have an exact name for. Not fear, exactly. Not grief. Something between them. She sat with him for 3 weeks. She did what she knew how to do. She read his chart. She asked the nurses careful questions. She noticed things and mentioned them politely, the way she had learned to mention things without making the staff feel watched. Her father, looking at her from the bed on the second day, said, "You got your mother's stubbornness." She said, "I got yours." He turned his face toward the window, but something shifted in him, some small settling, the way a thing settles when it finally rests on something solid. He did not say much else, but when she left each night, he squeezed her hand. The third week, he told her one thing he had never told her, a single story from a single night, in a deployment that had been over for 15 years. He told it briefly, without drama, looking at the ceiling the way Rutherford looked at the ceiling. She listened. She did not fill the silence after. She let it sit there. He nodded, after a while, as if something had been settled. She came back to Fort Bragg on a Tuesday in November. She had not announced the date. She had let Dr. Webb's assistant handle the administrative handoff, and the ward knew she was coming back sometime that week, but not the exact day and not the exact time. She walked in through the main entrance at 7:40 in the morning. Her badge was on. Her bag was over one shoulder. She was looking at her phone, scrolling through the overnight nursing notes, getting up to speed before she even reached the floor. She heard it before she understood it. She looked up. They were standing. All 14 of them. Every patient in Ward 7 who could physically stand had risen. Rutherford, on his prosthetic legs, which she knew cost him effort she could not calculate. Victor Osei at the edge of his bed, one hand gripping the rail. She would learn later that 2 of the other men had come to his room at 6 in the morning and helped him to his feet, and he had stood there for over an hour waiting, refusing to sit down. 4 men visible in the rear hallway through the glass doors, in wheelchairs that they had maneuvered to their doorways, and then they had risen out of those chairs and stood in the frames. They were in various conditions of broken. Some of them were hurting to do this. You could see it in their jaws, the particular set of a jaw when someone is deciding that the pain is acceptable. They stood anyway. There were no speeches. That was not what this was. These were men who had stood at attention at funerals, at flag ceremonies, at moments that required the body to say what the voice could not. They knew what standing meant and when to do it, and they had decided, together, without anyone having to say it out loud, that this was one of those moments. This was Ward 7 saying, "You are one of the people who stayed." Maya stopped walking. She looked at them. Her eyes filled. She pressed her lips together, and she looked up at the ceiling for exactly 1 second. The same way Rutherford looked at the ceiling at 2 in the morning, the way her father had looked at the ceiling when he told her the story, and then she looked back at them. She said, "You're all supposed to be resting." Rutherford said, without missing a beat, "We are. This is our rest face." Someone in the back laughed. The sound of it moved through the hallway like something let loose after a long time of being held. She walked in. They sat. The morning started. Later that week, Dr. Webb submitted a commendation on her behalf. He wrote several professional sentences about clinical judgment and specialized patient care. Maya read it and thought, that's not quite it. What it was something simpler and harder to write in a form. She had come to a place full of men who had decided that it was not safe to need anything from anyone anymore, and she had not tried to convince them otherwise. She had just done her work with care, and shown up with her whole self and stayed when it was difficult, and come back when she left. That was the whole of it. Her father called on Sunday. She was in the break room when her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. She felt something move through her chest. She picked up. "Hey, Dad," she said. "Hey, kid," he said. They talked for 40 minutes. It was not a dramatic conversation. It was ordinary. They talked about the weather in Tucson and a television show he had started watching, and whether she was eating enough. It was the best phone call she could remember. Some things take a long time to come back. Some doors have been shut so long that the frame has warped, and you cannot force them. You have to wait. You have to keep knocking in the quiet way, the way that says, I am still here, and eventually the wood shifts and the door opens and the light comes through. You just have to keep showing up. That is the whole lesson. That is all of it.